There's a moment, a very specific moment. And if you've ever loved someone who was avoidant, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the moment they realize you're not chasing them anymore, not begging, not shrinking yourself to fit into the tiny space they left for you. And in that moment, something in them breaks. Not because they lost you, but because they lost control. Stay with me here, because this is going to get uncomfortable before it gets clear. Avoidants are experts at one thing above everything else: managing distance. They pull you close just enough to keep you interested, then push you away just enough to keep you guessing. It's not always conscious. In fact, most of the time it isn't. It's a survival pattern, built somewhere way back, probably in childhood, when getting close to someone felt dangerous, or getting close to someone meant getting hurt, or disappointed, or abandoned. So they learned early: don't need people too much, don't depend, don't ask for too much love, because love that's asked for can be taken away. And so they grow up, and they become adults who crave connection just like everyone else. But the second that connection starts to feel real, something inside them panics, quietly, invisibly. And they start doing the thing they've always done: creating distance, small at first, a delayed text, a little coldness after a really good night together, a sudden need for space right when things were finally getting close. If you don't understand this pattern, it feels like whiplash. One day they're all in, and the next day they're a stranger. And most people, most good, loving, emotionally healthy people, respond to that whiplash by trying harder, by chasing, by asking, "What did I do wrong?" By shrinking their needs down smaller and smaller, hoping that if they just take up less space, the avoidant will stop running. Here's the part nobody tells you, though. Chasing an avoidant doesn't bring them closer. It confirms their deepest fear: that love is something you have to earn, that being needed is dangerous, that eventually, if they let you close enough, you'll consume them. So the more you chase, the more they retreat. It's not because you're not good enough. It's because your chasing is speaking directly to the exact wound they've spent their whole life protecting. Now here's where it gets interesting. Here's the part of the story most people never get to see, because most people give up before they get here. What happens when you stop chasing? Not out of manipulation, not as some kind of strategy to win them back. I'm talking about something real. The moment you actually, truly start respecting yourself enough to stop shrinking. This is where everything shifts. See, avoidants are used to one of two responses. Either someone chases them so hard that it confirms their fear of being smothered, or someone gets angry and reactive, which confirms their fear that closeness always ends in conflict and pain. What they are not used to, what genuinely destabilizes them, is someone who simply stops needing their approval to feel okay. Self-respect doesn't yell, it doesn't beg, it doesn't send the fourth paragraph explaining your feelings at 1 a.m. Self-respect is quiet, it's steady, it just stops participating in the chase. And for an avoidant, that silence is louder than anything you could have said. Because here's the truth about avoidant attachment that almost nobody talks about. Avoidants don't actually want distance. They want closeness just as badly as anyone else. What they're terrified of is losing themselves in it, losing control, being too much for someone, or having someone be too much for them. Their whole nervous system is wired to associate closeness with a loss of self. So when they pull away and you don't collapse, when you don't spiral, don't guilt trip, don't over-explain, don't shrink, something very strange happens in their mind. For the first time, they're watching someone hold their own ground without needing them to fix it, and it confuses them, because deep down, part of them expected, maybe even hoped, that you'd fall apart, that you'd prove that they matter that much to you. And when you don't fall apart, when you just quietly keep living your life, keep your boundaries, keep your peace, the avoidant is left with a very uncomfortable question they've spent their whole life avoiding. If they're okay without me, was I ever actually the safe one? Or was I the one running the whole time? That question is terrifying for them, because avoidants build their entire identity around being the one in control, the one who leaves first, the one who never gets hurt, because they never let anyone close enough to hurt them. So when someone shows up with real self-respect, someone who loves them, but doesn't need them to survive, it flips the entire script they've been running their whole life. Now, I want to be clear about something, because this isn't about revenge. This isn't about winning. This isn't some trick to make an avoidant chase you. Real self-respect isn't a strategy. If you're doing it to manipulate a reaction out of them, it won't work, because avoidants can sense performance from a mile away. Remember, they grew up reading Rooms for Danger. They know the difference between real peace and performed peace. What we're talking about here is something much deeper. It's what happens naturally when a person finally, truly values themselves enough to stop outsourcing their worth to someone who can't consistently show up for them. It's not a technique, it's a transformation. And that transformation is exactly what an avoidant cannot predict, cannot control, and deep down cannot stop thinking about. Because here's the thing about avoidance that might surprise you. They remember. They remember the people who chased them, and they remember them with a kind of tired relief when it's finally over. But the people who walked away with dignity, the people who loved them fully but didn't fall apart when the avoidant couldn't meet them there, those are the people who live rent-free in their head for years. Why? Because self-respect is rare. And on some level, even the most avoidant person recognizes it when they see it. It doesn't match the story they've told themselves about how relationships work. It doesn't match the pattern they expect. And when reality doesn't match the pattern, the brain doesn't let it go. It keeps replaying it, trying to make sense of it. So if you're someone who loved an avoidant, and you're sitting there wondering if walking away, if choosing yourself, if refusing to shrink anymore actually meant anything to them, I want you to understand something. It probably meant more than you'll ever know. Not because they'll come back. Some will, some won't. And honestly, that's not the point. It meant something, because for the first time, they experienced what it feels like to lose someone who wasn't going to lose themselves in the process. And that is something an avoidant heart has never had to sit with before. In part 2, we're going to go deeper. We're going to talk about what's actually happening inside an avoidant's mind in the weeks and months after you walk away with your self-respect intact. The internal spiral most of them will never admit to. And we're going to talk about something even more important. How to make sure that this newfound self-respect isn't just a reaction to them, but something that stays with you long after they're gone from your life. Stick around, because what happens next is the part most people never get to see. Let's pick up exactly where we left off, because now we go inside. Not into what you did. You already know what you did. You chose yourself. You held the line. Now let's go into what happens on the other side. Inside their mind. In the weeks after you're gone. It doesn't happen right away. That's the first thing to understand. Avoidants don't process loss the way most people do. There's no immediate flood of grief, no dramatic realization, no sudden 2 a.m. phone call begging you to come back. In the beginning, there's actually relief. Real relief. Because the pressure is gone. The thing they were subconsciously running from, closeness, intimacy, being truly seen, it's gone now too. And for a little while, that relief feels like peace. They tell themselves they're fine. They tell themselves it was for the best. They might even tell their friends that it just wasn't right. But relief has a shelf life. And somewhere around week 2, week 3, sometimes even months later, something starts to shift. It starts small. A song comes on. A memory surfaces at a strange hour. They reach for their phone to tell you something funny, and then remember, you're not there to tell anymore. And in that gap, in that silence where you used to be, something uncomfortable starts to creep in. Not sadness exactly, something closer to disorientation. Because for the first time, They're not the one who left. You didn't get angry. You didn't chase. You didn't fall apart and hand them the control they were used to holding. You just left, whole, intact. And that is not a story their nervous system knows how to file away. This is where the real work starts happening in their mind, whether they want it to or not. See, avoidants build their entire sense of safety around one core belief, that they are the ones who decide how close someone gets to them. They are the ones who control the distance. That's the whole architecture of how they've survived relationships their entire life. But you broke that architecture, not by fighting them for control, by simply not needing it in the first place. You didn't compete for the power. You just walked away holding your own. And so now, in the quiet, their mind starts running a question on a loop, usually late at night, usually when they can't distract themselves anymore. Why didn't they fight for me? And here's the twisted part. Even though they're the ones who pulled away first, even though they're the ones who created the distance, some part of them expected you to close the gap anyway. Because that's the pattern. That's always been the pattern. Someone pulls back, the other person chases, and the avoidant gets to feel wanted without ever having to risk being vulnerable first. But you didn't play your part in that pattern. You rewrote it. And now they're left holding a script with no one else in the scene. This is usually when the idealizing starts. You've probably heard this before, how avoidants suddenly seem to wake up once you're gone. Suddenly you're all they can think about. Suddenly the things that used to feel threatening, your presence, your needs, your voice, start to feel like things they miss desperately. But I need you to understand why this happens, because it's not romantic. It's psychological. Distance is the only condition under which an avoidant can fully feel love. Not because they're broken beyond repair, but because closeness activates fear, and fear shuts down access to feeling. So when you were close to them, part of their brain was in defense mode, managing the threat of intimacy. But now that you're gone, the threat is gone too. And for the first time, they can actually feel the full weight of what you meant to them, safely, from a distance, without the fear of losing themselves in it. Which means, painfully, some avoidants only fully love the people they've already lost. Now, I want you to really sit with the next part, because this is the part that matters most for you, not them. None of this, none of what happens in their mind, the missing, the idealizing, the 2 a.m. spirals, none of it is your responsibility to fix. You are not responsible for managing someone else's nervous system. You were never supposed to shrink yourself down to a size that felt safe for someone still healing from wounds that had nothing to do with you. Your self-respect was never a weapon aimed at them. It was never a strategy to make them feel this. It was simply you, finally choosing not to disappear inside a relationship that required your disappearance to function. And that's the part I really want to leave you with. Because some of you listening right now are hoping this means they'll come back. And maybe they will. Some avoidants do come back, humbled, ready to actually show up differently, having finally faced the pattern instead of running from it again. That happens. It's real. But here's what I need you to hear, clearly, without any softening. Their coming back cannot be the reason your self-respect existed in the first place. If you held your boundaries, walked away with dignity, protected your peace, and did all of that secretly hoping it would make them chase you, then it was never truly self-respect. It was a delayed strategy, wearing the costume of healing. Real self-respect doesn't have a hidden agenda. It doesn't perform stillness while waiting for a reaction. It just is, whether they come back or not, whether they ever realize what they lost or not, whether they ever say the words you deserve to hear or not. You already know this. Somewhere inside you, you already know that peace was never supposed to be a bargaining chip. It was supposed to be yours, just yours. Something you built, not something you were handed by someone else's timing, someone else's healing, someone else's readiness to finally choose you the way you always chose them. So if they come back, if one day there's a message, a call, an apology soaked in everything they finally understand, you get to decide what you do with that. From strength, not from starvation, not from the same old ache trying to disguise itself as closure, from a place where you're already whole, and anything they bring now is simply extra, not necessary. And if they never come back at all, if the silence just stays silence forever, you were still right to choose yourself. You were still right to stop shrinking, because the goal was never to make them realize your worth. The goal was for you to realize it. And it sounds like, somewhere in all of this, you already have. So here's where we leave it. Picture this. Somewhere, months from now, maybe longer, there's a quiet room. Late at night, a phone screen glowing in the dark. And on the other end of that silence, they're staring at an old photo, replaying a version of you that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't shrink, the version that simply walked away whole. And for the first time in their life, they understand exactly what they lost. But you're not in that room. You're somewhere else entirely, living, growing, becoming the version of yourself that never needed their return to feel complete. And that's the ending they never saw coming.